Hey guys, Gamer Luke here, and welcome to my review on Jurassic World Dominion. Now, I just want to get started and say I personally thought the movie was really good. I know it's getting absolutely pooped on by critics right now. I mean, it's like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score seems to be good. So it's a case where the critics don't like it, but the general audience seems to like it. A couple things I wanted to say before I get started with the review. I'm actually a really big fan of the Jurassic franchise, and even if some movies aren't as good as others, I do really like the franchise and the movies. I saw the film on June 10th, so opening day in the United States. The photos are a little low quality because I use the PlayStation editing software, and in order to get photos you want on it, you need to send them to the PlayStation app, and then take screenshots of each one, and with sending them to the PlayStation app, they lose quality. So that's why some of the photos are pretty bad quality, but it's the best I could do. Some of them also have little icons at the top right. That was just my PlayStation letting me know it took a screenshot, but for some reason it includes that in the screenshot. Just hassles with having to edit with the PlayStation software. Anyway, let's get into the review. So, the movie opens on the Bering Sea, and you see a crabbing ship. And this is something that was in the prologue and in the trailers. The mosasaur jumps up and bites the crab cage and pulls the whole ship down with it. It was a really cool scene, and one of the only scenes with the mosa. I think there's this one and then one at the end. So there's really not a lot of times with the mosasaur in this movie, but the two scenes that it does have are pretty good. So then after this, we move into this kind of newscast type thing, kind of like what we saw with the Battle at Big Rock film, or short film. And it's kind of like in one of the Now This sites. It says that on the top right, if I remember correctly. And it basically just shows a breakdown of what happened with the last movie in Fallen Kingdom, and some more dangers that have been happening in the wild with dinosaurs, and what we're going to do and everything. So the title card plays, and we reunite with Claire, Zia, and Franklin from Fallen Kingdom. And they are infiltrating this one place that's holding these Nazutoceratops and Sinoceratops, if I remember correctly. And basically they have this one organization, or they're working for this one organization that helps dinosaurs, that helps fix them up and send it back out into the wild, or just keep them where no one can touch them. So they infiltrate the building, and they see there's this one baby Nazutoceratops who is really sick, and they're not going to make it in time for the DFW to save her. So they take it into their own hand and kind of pull a baby Tyrannosaur in Jurassic Park: The Lost World, and take it with them, and the people that work at the facility start chasing after them, and there's this cool chase scene where full-grown Nazutoceratops and Sinoceratops charge into the pursuing cars and take them out. So this scene isn't really needed in the movie at all, but it is a pretty good scene nonetheless. So then it cuts to the next morning, and Franklin is talking to Claire how he doesn't think he could do this anymore, and he found an actual job. And that job is working in the dinosaur department of the CIA. So that's going to come into play later in the movie, but basically Franklin is out of the picture in Claire's organization. So one of the things I wanted to comment on right now is that 5 to 6 minute prologue that was released about half a year ago is not in the movie, and I think that's one of the things that people aren't happy about with it. Because there is some moments in the movie where you need the context of that prologue to understand what's going on. Like when DeWanda Wise's character, Kayla Watts, says, this isn't our problem, when the T-Rex and Giga start fighting each other. You don't really know what's going on, or why it's not their problem, if you haven't seen the prologue. Another thing that kind of happens is you don't really know why the Quetzals are a problem and why they need that air support on, because if you're coming into the movie just a casual fan of Jurassic Spheres, you might not know what a Quetzalcoatlus is, and you might not know why it's such a big problem, and that's another reason you need that prologue, because it shows up in that prologue, and you could see the size of it. So back to the movie. Next we see Owen wrangling some Parasaurolophus with other people, and he says he's getting them to a safer place, and later on we learn that place is Biosyn. Now, they've been given global rights to all the dinosaurs, and each captured dinosaur goes to their valley in the Italian mountains. So it was another scene in the trailer. You see him wrangle it, you see him touch it, and say it's going to be okay. But after they're riding off, the camera pans, and you see some people stalking Owen and watching where he goes, and this is going to play a part because eventually they're going to follow him back to his house. And an important thing is that Maisie from Fallen Kingdom, the human clone, is like wanted by everyone. That it's legally wanted, illegally wanted, and really everyone is looking for her. So around this time, we see Maisie take her bike and go across the bridge, oh no, and into town, and she sees the apatosaur. This was also in the trailer, the very beginning of the first trailer, where it makes that funny noise. So there's that whole apatosaur sequence, and then she goes back home. But it's important because after that, Claire comes back from hanging out with Z and Franklin and taking that Nazutoceratops, and talks to her about, you better not have crossed that bridge. So they have this whole moment, and Maisie is complaining that she's been in isolation for like 4 years, because at this point in the movie she's 14, and it's been 4 years since Fallen Kingdom. So she complains how she doesn't really have any freedoms, and how she really just can't do anything, and then she hits Claire with the, I'm not a real person anyway. So Claire kind of has a mother moment and comforts her, says it's all gonna be okay. And then Owen shows up, they do a little handshake, and it kind of goes on normally, and there's some banter, but not really anything too special. It's just, basically, what you need to know is Maisie really wants to leave home, but she can't because everyone's looking for her. So then, we see Blue and Blue's baby Beta, and there's not too much time with Blue in the movie. There's really only some times at the beginning and a couple scenes at the end. There's not too much Blue in this movie. So the next day, Maisie's outside, and she sees Beta, and she goes over to her, but then Owen goes by her, tells her to go back inside, and he goes to investigate, because Beta ran away, and he wants to see, like, what's going on. So he is now going to follow Beta, and Maisie is mad at this point, because Owen's not really letting her do anything, and she goes inside and has a tantrum, and then gets her bike and starts riding off past the bridge. Or, I shouldn't say past the bridge, she starts riding to the bridge. Now, this is the point in the movie where everything starts to go wrong. So, first, while Owen is following Beta, she gets kidnapped by a fake fox. So Beta gets kidnapped and taken by the people that were stalking Owen, and then some other people find Maisie on the bridge and kind of corner her on both sides, and they capture her. Now, I mean, I was surprised when they took Beta, they just full-on slammed into Blue with the car and flung Blue down a cliff. Blue survived. It wasn't a big cliff, but she like rolled down the cliff. So that surprised me. I didn't expect them to just slam into Blue, but you know, bad guys gotta do bad things, I guess, to earn their credit of being a bad guy. So they take Beta, and they take Maisie. So Owen sees Maisie on the bridge being cornered, and they absolutely just yeet Maisie's bike into the river. So he starts trying to run after them, but he can't, and he starts taking fire and getting shot at. So he goes back to the house, says to Claire what happened, and they're panicking. They go outside, Blue's sitting right there waiting for them. So Claire goes outside, and then Blue's right there, and she says to Owen, Owen! She's scared, because obviously there's a velociraptor right there. So Owen comes outside, does the thing in the trailer where he's like, I promise you we're gonna get her back, and Blue scratches his hand and runs off. So next we go to this one barn somewhere, I think it was like Oklahoma or Nebraska, and there's these kids. They go look at something because they see one giant insect flying, and they go, and then it turns out it's a whole massive locust swarm of giant locusts. Like, they're huge. They're like 3 feet each. They're not maybe too much, but like they're like at least a good foot each. So they start chasing after them. They go in the barn. They start getting in. So there's one girl with a shovel, and it basically sets up the main part of the story, which follows these big locusts and the main problem behind them. So then it cuts. Ellie Sattler comes to check on what's happening because she's doing some article on something with crops, if I remember correctly. And she looks, and it turns out that the big locusts are only eating seeds that aren't biosyn seeds. So Ellie needs to get a sample, and she also needs a witness for court because they gotta take down biosyn. So Alan Grant is gonna be used as the witness, and Ian Malcolm is actually working as the in-house spokesperson or philosopher or something like that in the biosyn facility, so he has access and he could get them in. So Ellie goes to see Alan Grant. We get the Alan Grant introduction, and they get their whole reunion, and They kind of have this bantering between each other, but eventually Alan obviously comes with. So there is some time jump between Maisie being taken and Zia, Franklin, and Claire taking that Pseudoceratops. But anyway, sometime a little after Maisie's taken, Claire calls Franklin, who, as I said earlier, is now working at the CIA. So he comes outside to talk to them. So they find who took her, and they find where the shipment's going, and it's going to Malta. So this starts the Malta sequence, and they go to Malta. So then you meet up with Barry from the first Jurassic World, who's now working for some type of like FBI type thing, but for Italy or Malta. So anyway, you meet up with him, and he tells them about some kind of underground black market dinosaur trading that's going on. And they look for their guy, they spot him, he goes inside, so then Owen rushes in, and Claire's also here too, looking around. So Owen rushes in and chases after the guy, and there's this whole chase sequence. There's Compies here, there's Lystrosaurus, there's everything. You see the two dino, the little baryonyx with the robotic arm, and the other dino, I forgot what it is, fighting each other in the little arena. And this is also when you get the scene with the Carnotaurus and Allosaurus, and Owen fending him off. But anyway, he chases the guy, eventually pins him down in the little arena where the baryonyx and other one are fighting, and he interrogates him and see what's going on. So he gets a name, I'm pretty sure, and a location, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly what happened because I saw the movie a little while ago now, but he gets some valuable information from the guy, and then he gets one arm eaten and chomped on by a baryonyx, and another arm is being nibbled on by one of the Lystrosaurus, so that's pretty funny. But that one guy does end up dying to, I think maybe it was the baryonyx, but it bit his head. So then they get eyes on the person they're looking for, which is some woman in white, and kind of like a James Bond-esque villain. Like, she's British, she's in a white trench coat, and very fancy, with sunglasses, you know. And they see her in an alleyway meeting up with some people, and she shows the Atrociraptors in the cages. So she demonstrates how they are kind of like the Indoraptor from Fallen Kingdom, and then the fact that they react to the laser and attack that. I didn't really mind that too much, but there is some people who really don't like that idea. It didn't affect me, though. So from what I think happens, she gets spotted and she starts running, and then the truck driver also starts going. Long story short, he crashes, and James Bond woman is calling him and telling him to open the cages because they all spilled out, and this is where Barry and some other people are. So he opens the cages, the Atrociraptors come out, and the laser gets pointed at all of the people. And, I mean, that is kind of dumb, just seeing some cat like a laser pointer being pointed at people, but it's not that much of a big deal. Anyway, a bunch of them die. Barry gets away, though, so that's good. He gets saved by Owen. So around this time, I think before some of it happened, Claire was chasing James Bond woman around, and she kind of traps her in this one random residential house, and the people are obviously screaming inside, but she interrogates her, gets some information, and then she points the little laser pointer at Claire, so now one of the Atrociraptors is on her, so she obviously starts doing that whole rooftop running scene. So before what we just talked about at the black market, Claire actually met up with Kayla, and Kayla kind of has, at the beginning, and kind of has this, like, tough girl stereotype-like character. So Kayla actually saw Maisie and Beta both being transported in the separate vehicles and didn't do anything about it, and she's not really doing anything about it when she talks with Claire, even when Claire shows her a photo of Maisie, who Kayla saw. So back to the chase. I don't know how it happens, but Claire ends up hanging off of something on a building and is about to fall. But Kayla is actually happening to be walking by at that time, so she helps Claire down and then starts up a truck, because obviously the Atrociraptors are still chasing her. Back to what Owen's doing, Barry finds the white coat James Bond woman and tells Owen to go get on a bike and, you know, go reunite with Claire so they can get Maisie. And basically the James Bond woman is presumably arrested by Barry. And that's the last we see of her and Barry. But Owen gets on the bike, and then we have the whole chase scene that was in some of the trailers. it is. I personally really liked it because I think it's well done because they choose not to have any music during the chase, so you just hear like the motorcycle sounds and the dinos chasing it, and it does sound really nice. So he gets chased through the streets of Malta and eventually goes to a beach where Claire and Kayla are now in Kayla's big plane that was in the trailer with the Quetzal attacked, and they don't have a whole lot of time to get out of there, so Kayla starts moving it and then pulls up, and then Claire tells her to drop the back ramp because it's a big cargo plane, so Kayla drops the back ramp, and Owen gets onto the plane while the Atrociraptors are still chasing him. So he gets on, but another Atrociraptor jumps on the plane, but the motorcycle falls back and slams into the Atrociraptor, and the Atrociraptor flies out into the ocean. So now, both sets of our characters are off to Biosyn. So around this time, Alan and Ellie arrive at some place where they can transition from a plane to a helicopter to get to the facility, and they meet up with Ramsey Cole, who is one of the main people at Biosyn and really close to Lewis Dodson, who we're going to get to in a little bit. So they start flying over to the compound, and Ramsey Cole tells them about like the Giga and what they're trying to do and things like that. So they land, start getting a brief tour, and then Dodson shows up. And if you don't remember Dodson, I don't blame you, because in the movies, he's in one little scene in the beginning of Jurassic Park, and he's the one guy in the red shirt who tells Nedry to take the embryos and gives him the Barbasol can. Now, it's not the same actor as before, because let's just say the first actor has a criminal history at this point and is not the greatest person. So it is a new actor, but the new actor does a good job. In the books, his character is much more fleshed out, and he does a lot more evil things, and the Dodson in this movie is pretty similar to what we get in the books. So he has a really awkward conversation with them, and you could tell he's really anxious and nervous about them figuring out the truth, because he's stuttering, he doesn't know what to say, kind of like I am in this video right now. But yeah, he's stuttering, he doesn't know what to say, and then he just kind of prematurely ends the conversation and walks away. But anyway, then we meet back up with Malcolm, and he's giving this one speech, and the speech finishes, and he gets a bunch of signatures, and then he starts talking with Alan and Ellie, and him and Alan still kind of have some beef, and you could tell it in what they say from, like, what Alan said in Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic Park 1. But anyway, they still kind of have beef with each other, but it kind of gets solved later on. But Malcolm secretly gives Ellie one of the access wristbands to get around the whole area, tells them the whole sublevels and everything. So then Malcolm needs to go do something else, and Ramsey comes back and tells them that they can look around the whole place by themselves, and he kind of suggests to go down to the sublevel. Like, you could really tell that he helped, and it's kind of not just like a random character switch. You know he was trying to do it from the beginning, because he subtly directs them towards going to the sublevels. He's like, so don't go over there, go to the sublevels, you don't want to go down there, that's restricted area. He like puts a lot of time into talking why you shouldn't go down there, to get them to go down there, and to get them to know that's where they need to go. So Alan and Ellie obviously both head down there because they have the wristbands, they put on some lab coats, and they go to the locust containment area. They go inside, and they need to get this one sample. So there's this pretty tense scene where they're slowly walking through. They need to grab one and inject something into it to get the sample that they need to prove the similarities between the locusts attacking the grass, the crops, and the locusts in the Biosyn compound. So they get their sample, but then the whole hive wakes up and starts swarming everywhere, and they eventually make their way out. And there's this one scene on cameras, and that's going to be important because that helps Dodson know later on that they obviously took the sample. So then we get some time with Dr. Wu, who now has Maisie and Beta, and he talks to Maisie about her backstory and everything like that. So we learn a lot more about Maisie's character, and we learn that it wasn't Benjamin Lockwood who just made another daughter. It was actually Charlotte Lockwood, Benjamin's original daughter, who made a copy of herself, Maisie, because she had some genetic illness, and she wanted to have a kid, but wanted them to be a perfect kid, so they didn't have that. So we learn how she would. Wu describes her as being really bright and really ambitious and a really good scientist and pure-hearted and everything. And throughout this movie, Wu does have a pretty good character arc and character redemption. So yeah. But Dodgson starts talking to Wu, so he's preoccupied, and Maisie has the time to take one of the wristbands that's sitting on a desk, free beta, and get the heck out of there. So she starts running around, and eventually she meets up with Alan and Ellie, and Alan and Ellie take Maisie and start looking for a way to get out of there. So then we go back and see Kayla, Owen, and Claire flying to the compound, and they're trying to get access, but obviously they don't get access because they're just unregistered craft entering a very valuable area, so they don't turn off the air defenses for them. And basically what that means is the Quetzals can attack them without not being able to attack them. The Quetzals can freely attack the plane. So that's exactly what the Quetzal does. The Quetzal attacks the plane, starts making it go down. So Owen and Claire have this one moment, because there's one ejector scene. Owen is telling Claire that they're probably not going to make it, but she can, and you are Maisie's mother, and you should do it. So they have this one moment. Claire gets ejected, and there's this really cool scene. The camera is stuck on a certain point, and it's just following her, flying through the air and getting attacked by pteranodons, but she deploys the parachute, has a rough landing, if you can call it a landing, and then she lands in the trees, and she is wakes up hanging from one of the trees, still in the ejector seat. So then we see the Therizinosaurus, and a pleasant surprise was that the Therizinosaurus is actually blind, and that makes the scene 10 times more tense, because she needs to be silent. So she drops out of the ejector seat and starts crawling towards the water, and the Therizinosaurus just slaps a deer, and it goes flying just to get to Claire. And so it's slowly walking towards Claire, the scene we saw in the trailer in that one image. So Claire gets underwater, and it roars towards the water and walks away. But it was the scene was done really well. So now we see what happened to Owen and Kayla. So we see the plane crashed in the ice lake by the dam, and they get out of the plane, and Owen thanks Kayla. And then the Pyroraptor shows up, so you see it behind a rock, and then it comes out and does the whole scene from the trailer. Now, there's a lot of dinosaurs in this movie that suffered from not having a lot of screen time, and the Pyroraptor is definitely one of those. You really only see what you got in the trailer besides a few more second-long clips. In reality, there's so much dinosaurs that deserve more screen time, like the Therizinosaurus could have had more, the Pyroraptor should have had more, the Mosasaur should have had more, even the Giga should have had more. I mean, there's so much new dinos they had just to kind of have, and not to have a purpose of having, if that makes sense. So, yeah. But the whole Pyroraptor scene happens, as in the trailer, and they get away through some elevator shaft, and they continue moving towards the facility. So then, Dodson finally sees what happened with Grant and Allie and Maisie, and stops the Hyperloop. And what they took to get out is called the Hyperloop. It's some underground transport system, kind of like bullet trains. It's some underground little pod transport system, but it stops them in the amber mines. So they get out, and it's pretty dark and really eerie, and it's like pitch black. So Grant makes a torch. They are looking around trying to find a place, and he's climbing up this one ladder. He holds the ladder up at the top. He holds the torch to the top of the ladder, and there's this jump scare of the Dimetrodon just lunging forward at the camera. And it actually caught me off guard, because I expected the Dimetrodons to be really tame, because I play Ark Survival Evolved, and in Ark Survival Evolved, they kind of just sit there and don't really do anything. But these Dimetrodons were hungry for blood. There was, I think, like 3 or 4 of them. They were all just jumping and trying to kill everyone. So around the same time that happened, after Dodson stopped the transport, while they were going through the caves, he called Malcolm up and Ramsey up, because he saw on the cameras Malcolm give Ellie the little access band. So he just calls Malcolm up just to fire him, and they have this one moment where Malcolm kind of just sizes up the Dodson. It's a really good scene where Malcolm is just beating down on him verbally. But anyway, he gets fired, and the worst decision Dodgen can make, he asks Ramsey to escort Malcolm out of the building. So Ramsey does that. He goes, but then he tells Malcolm where they stopped and how he can get them out. So he starts going over there, and then that whole sequence I just talked about with the amber mines comes into play, and then Malcolm shows up at that gate, and with the help of Ramsey in the control room, opens the gate, and they can get out. So now the three characters are together. So a little before that, timing-wise, we go back to Kayla and Owen as they're walking through the mangrove swamp that Claire was at. And out of nowhere, the T-Rex just shows up, and then the Giga shows up. And I was thinking, wait, are they doing the fight like now? Is this happening right now? But the actual fight wasn't then. It was just a little confrontation. So they start nibbling at each other, and that's when Kayla says, they're not here for us, or this isn't about us, and they both leave, and then soon after they call off the fight and walk away. So this next scene was done really well. So it's nighttime. Claire gets to one of those observation towers, but she hears the little owl hoot that the Dilophosaurs make. And I completely forgot the Dilophosaurs were in the movie at this point. And, I mean, I was visibly in shock, like my mouth dropped, because you know what that sound is from the original Jurassic Park. So she tries to start climbing up the ladder, but it's revealed there's 3 Dilophosaurs. And eventually she just kind of gives up and slumps up against a wall, and one walks up to her, does the whole thing. But right before it's about to spit, Owen goes up and chokes it, and Kayla stabs it with she has a little zappy taser thingy. Now this is another thing that a lot of people were complaining about, because they think it's stupid how Owen choked out the Dilophosaur, but in reality, I watched one of Clayton Fiordi's videos, and what actually happened was that's where their spit sacs are located, where their venom sacs are located, so we actually choked it where its venom sacs were so it couldn't spit, so it actually makes sense. So then Dodson and Ramsey have a moment, and Ramsey just doesn't talk to Dodson. Like, Dodson's looking at him, and Ramsey's just staring at Dodson, just not talking. It's funny, because Dodson knows that 2 of the closest people just completely just betrayed him. So he decides as a last resort just to burn all the evidence. So he goes, and, I mean, he probably knew this was going to happen, because there's built-in flamethrowers where the locusts are being held. So he turns those on, but somehow they break out, because, I mean, there's a swarm of, like, thousands of them in there. But they break out, and they are on fire. They break out, and they start dropping flames everywhere, and that's how the whole valley gets lit on fire. So, everything's on fire at this point, and then you cut back to the car that Malcolm, Ellie, Alan, and Maisie are in, and one of the locusts falls straight on the windshield, startles everyone, and then the car swerves and starts tilting off a cliff. There's this one funny moment with some Malcolm dialogue, and then they all fall down the cliff and roll down. And this is the first time in the movie where everyone meets back up. So Maisie finally meets back up with Owen and Claire, and Owen meets Ellen. You know, everyone meets each other for the first time, and the whole cast is together for the first time in the film. But the reunion is short-lived, because the Giga shows up out of nowhere, so everyone crouches behind the car. Malcolm actually goes under the car, and the Giga's like circling slowly around the car, looking through the flipped-over windows. So when they have the chance, everyone except Malcolm starts running to try and climb to the top of the one of the observation towers. So then, to cause a distraction, Malcolm impales one of the flaming locusts on a stick, waves it around, and gets the Giga's attention, and then when the Giga roars, he throws it straight into the Giga's throat and runs away, and of course, the Giga breathes fire, so now it's a Giga that breathes fire, so that's pretty crazy. It'd be kind of funny if they had some sort of line where someone was like, great, it breathes fire now, but they don't. I get it, though, because it's not meant to be a funny scene. It's meant to be like an, oh no, it's the Giga scene. But, yeah, he throws this flaming locust in his throat. It breathes fire for a bit, and it gives him and the rest of the group time to climb up the ladder. So eventually everyone gets inside the building, and Owen has his little moment where he's like, see, not so bad. And then, as in the trailer, the Giga crashes through the window, everyone backs up. But then Claire, I forgot how, I think she was like tied onto something, but she starts going back towards the Giga's mouth, so she's caught at the last second right next to the Giga. And Owen just starts stabbing the crap out of the Giga's face. Like, he just takes his knife and just stabs like at least 5 times. And eventually Kayla, or someone, kicks the little taser to Claire. She picks it up, tases the Giga, and it gets bothered and walks away for the time being. So everyone kind of fortifies inside, and they have their chance to have some banter. There's not a lot of dialogue about like what they did in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. There's a lot of opportunity for conversations like that, but they don't use it, which kind of sucks. But anyway, they make a plan. So they find that there's a helicopter they can take, but they obviously need to enable that air defense to make it so they don't get hit down by a Quetzal. So they make a plan. Ellie is going to go with Claire to do something in the control room to turn on the air systems. And then Owen is going to go with Maisie and Grant and try to get Beta back. And Malcolm does his line, "You made a promise to a dinosaur," and they go with their separate ways. So Grant, Owen, and Maisie go looking for Beta, and they're going around with the flashlight, and Alan has some commentary that talks about how the raptors, now they go straight for the neck and they don't disembowel them. So just nice Alan being really nice to be around and not making the conversation or situation unsettling at all. But anyway, they find Beta. They start triangulating, which is when you see Maisie and Alan doing the little famous thing where you put your hand out so the raptor doesn't get you. So they triangulate, and Owen tranquilizes it right when it starts to run for Alan. So now they have Beta. So then Ellie and Claire make it to the main control room, and you have a funny moment where Malcolm, once again, is giving Ellie directions like he did in Jurassic Park, except this time the directions aren't good, because in Jurassic Park they were good, and now they're not, and she says how she hates getting directions from Malcolm, and it's a pretty funny scene, because it's a nice little callback to Jurassic Park. But anyway, they turn it on, but then it goes off again, so Ellie just takes an axe and slams the axe into what they're trying to do, and it works. It turns on the air defenses, but it did something else. And basically what you need to know is that Dodson, at this point, is just trying to get out of there, so he takes the Hyperloop and he's just trying to get out of there. But since Ellie just swung the axe at the little control panel, it screwed a lot of stuff up, and one of those was Dodson's Hyperloop. So the Hyperloop just stops in the middle of the track, not out front of like the ambulance and anything. It just stops in the middle of the track. And you have a really nice scene, and I forgot to say a little before this, you actually see the Barbasol can from Jurassic Park again, so he takes that with him and starts rushing to the Hyperloop. But anyway, he goes outside to try and go on foot, or at least to try and see where he is. So there's this air that's coming out of the side of the tube, like a really strong gust of air, and then you see a Dilophosaurus, so he starts running back to the back to get inside the Hyperloop. He gets inside, and then he looks to his other side. There's another one there, and then 2 walk in from the other side, so he's cornered by 3 Dilophosaurs. He says, some typical villain thing, and like, what's your story? And they all spit at his face, and he gets destroyed, and you hear the screaming, and after the screen goes black. So really nice scene. I loved it because it's just perfect poetic justice. Like, he also dies with the Barbasol can like Nedry, and he also dies to it. Dilophosaurus like Nedry. It's just perfect. I really like how they did his death, and it's definitely different from the book death. So now that they got their air defenses on and their helicopter there, they get a plan, and they start heading to the main building so they can get to the helicopter. But right before they're about to leave, Wu tags along and begs them to come with, and he says how they need him so he can fix the locust problem and everything and release this one locust into the wild, and it'll transfer something that'll kill out all the locusts, so they stop terrorizing everyone. So they all make it to the main compound just in time for the final fight. So Rexy shows up, and it does the little, he recreates the title screen. And so Rexy just starts getting destroyed, and like she's flung in the walls, and it looks like she's dead. And then someone shoots a flare, or one of the locusts flies by or something, I don't really remember, and it goes past the Giga. The Giga looks, and that's when the Therizinosaurus is also revealed to be there. So Theri starts fighting the Giga, and then Rexy gets back up, who looked dead. Like, her eyes were not moving, and just her body was not moving, but she's back. They start fighting the Giga, and Rexy waits for her moment, charges at the Giga's neck, and pushes it into the Theri's claws, and the Giga is dead. So a lot of people were thinking that because it was on all the marketing, the observation tower, the Giga was going to be crushed by that. But the Giga was actually killed by being impaled by the Theri, so little difference there. So everyone gets away on the helicopter, and they all meet back up that one first landing pad, and Alan and Ellie end up getting back together again. Finally, I mean, it was pretty predictable that it happened, because obviously that's what the fans want, but it is good that they finally did it. And that's the movie. It kind of ends like that. There's some scenes like the T-Rex meets up with the buck and mother T-Rex from The Lost World. Mosasaur is seen actually kind of playing with whales, and there's a scene where you can see Dr. Wu releasing that one locust that's going to fix everything into the wilds. Things like that. And also, Beta is given back to Blue. Now, the main plot hole that I see is Maisie is still in just as much danger as she was when the movie started. It doesn't solve the fact that she is still wanted, and now she's allowed to come with Owen and Claire on their adventures, because obviously she came with to release Beta back, but in the beginning of the movie it said how she can't come with them. So that's one big plot hole, the fact that that is just unsolved and she's still wanted and she's still illegal. But yeah, that's one of the plot holes that's left over after the movie. So out of my final thoughts and opinions on the movie, I personally really like it. Honestly, I'd probably give it an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. This is how I stand on it. I don't feel like it's the epic conclusion that it was advertised as, but it is a good movie. Obviously the critics have their reasons, I guess, but if you want to go to the movies to have a good time and genuinely have a good experience, I would see this movie. I guess a lesson you could learn is don't trust the critics every time. You gotta see it for yourself. Don't not see a movie or see a movie based on what the critics have to say, because you could be missing some really good films, like I think what this one is, or, you know, things like Fallen Kingdom or The Lost World or Jurassic Park 3, which to critics aren't good films, but to the general audience, they're at least okay, right? You at least have a good time when you watch them. So I really liked it. I feel like there's a lot of things that it could have done better, but it did satisfy me, and I walked out of the theater feeling satisfied and genuinely enjoying the movie that I watched. So that's my review on Jurassic World Dominion. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know how you like these types of videos, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.